History often forgets the men who ruled empires, especially those who barely had time to sit on the throne. Aemilian, a name barely whispered among Roman emperors, took power during one of the darkest times in Roman history, the crisis of the 3rd century. His reign was as brief as a Roman summer storm, fierce, sudden, and tragically short-lived. Yet behind those 88 days lies a story of ambition, chaos, and the crumbling world of a once mighty empire. The year was 253 CE. Rome was no longer the invincible empire of old. Its borders were under constant attack from Germanic tribes in the north, Persians in the east, and rebellious generals from within. Emperors rose and fell with alarming speed. The throne was not earned by bloodline or Senate approval, but by the sword. Aemilianus, or Aemilian, was not born into power. He was a new man, likely of North African descent, who rose through the military ranks on the strength of his courage and leadership. Stationed in Moesia along the Danube frontier, Aemilian watched helplessly as foreign invaders poured across the Roman borders. One of the most humiliating threats came from the Goths, who exacted heavy tribute from the empire in exchange for peace. Aemilian had had enough. When the Gothic king violated the peace and invaded again, Aemilian struck back hard. He led a swift, brutal campaign that crushed the invaders. His soldiers, drunk on victory and weary of a weak emperor, proclaimed Aemilian as Augustus, Emperor of Rome. But there was a problem. Rome already had an emperor. Trebonianus Gallus, ruling from Italy, was seen as ineffective, especially after he failed to defend Rome's borders or inspire confidence among his troops. So when Aemilian marched toward Rome with a victorious army, Gallus panicked. He called upon another general, Valerian, to support him. But Valerian was still far off, and Aemilian was fast approaching. What followed was a collision course of destiny. Aemilian and Gallus met near Interamna, modern-day Terni, and in a brief but decisive battle, Gallus and his son were killed, some say by their own troops. Aemilian entered Rome not as a barbarian invader, but as its newest emperor. But Rome in the 3rd century was not a place for stability. Aemilian's legitimacy was shaky. He had no dynastic claim, no Senate support, and his power was entirely dependent on the loyalty of the army. And that army was about to change its mind. As promised, Valerian marched toward Rome. His forces were massive and seasoned. Fearing a civil war they could not win, Aemilian's own men did what had become routine in that era. They assassinated their emperor to avoid conflict. Just 3 months after claiming the throne, Aemilian was dead, likely murdered by his own guards near Spoletium. His reign had lasted only 88 days. Though short, Aemilian's time as emperor reflects a far bigger crisis. The Roman Empire was falling apart, not from a single enemy, but from within. In a span of 50 years, over 20 emperors rose and fell, most of them dying violently. This era saw not only external invasions and plagues, but the erosion of faith in institutions, loyalty, and leadership. The story of Aemilian is a cautionary tale, not just about ambition, but about the dangers of a fractured world. In times of chaos, those who rise too quickly often fall just as fast, and yet Aemilian dared to fight when others stayed silent. His name may not be carved in triumphal arches or echoed in history books, but his story survives for those who seek the forgotten lessons of the past. Greatness is not always measured by how long you lead, but by what you stand for when your world is collapsing. In a world where leadership is often driven by ego or fear, remember Aemilian. Be brave enough to act in crisis, wise enough to see the cost, and humble enough to know that even the briefest candle can light the darkness.